and I have thistles growing this tall, and they've bloomed, what's going to happen? See, that's what the weeds in your life do. They bloom. They're beautiful when they bloom. And what happens when I tried this last night? I was on the lawnmower. I went to reach with my bare hand. No, what do I have to do? I have to put on heavy gloves. And I have to go in there and I have to pull it up from the root. I can chop it off with the weed trimmer. Not going to do it. I have to pull it up from the roots. And there's a song, Taproot. See, those are the weeds in our lives. They grab onto our lives. And if we try to grab onto those, it hurts us. And if we leave it in our life, what's going to happen? It's going to spread. I have been contemplating this sermon series. Every time I write a sermon, begin my sermon writing on Tuesdays. Obviously not knowing what's going to be going on in the world. But it always seems that each one of these sermons speaks very well to where we are today with the leaders in our world. And as we walk through 1 Kings and we walk through these different leaders who show up in Israel's history, we understand why they're in there, why we are told these stories, why are we to know about these kings from long ago, which really today have no effect on us. But the reality is that we need to learn from them, especially our leaders need to learn from them. So here we are in June of 2025, and let me tell you, our country is going through it right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially since we just bombed Iran and took out 3 of their nuclear facilities. I mean, seriously, confidence in our political system is probably at a very all-time low in some areas. In other areas, it's in an all-time high. We got protests that happened over the last few weeks, and not just protests, violent protests, no matter what they say. It's mostly peaceful. Mostly, well, that means it could be 51% peaceful and 49% violent. That's pretty bad if you ask me. The mainstream media wants us to think that we are more divided than ever. And the politics, the polarization that's happening in our politics is just unbelievable. Many people have chosen sides, and there's no in-between. We've not seen it like this in decades. In our world today, we're constantly searching for those leaders who will do the right thing, those leaders who will lead in a godly way, who will do what is right, who will stand for truth, who will stand with integrity. Instead of doing what seems best for themselves and what's going to make them look good, they'll stand for what is right. And this search has become even more pressing today as we navigate through this profound shift in our political landscape, full of economic volatility and uncertainty about our future. Yet even in these very challenging times, our hearts are crying out for leadership that transcends the failures and the limitations of the past. One of the things that bothers me, and this is really the only political thing I'm going to say, is the only thing that really bothers me is they keep bringing up, well, at least we're not the last administration. I'm like, well, you don't have to do a whole lot to be better than that. Personally, that's how I feel. So quit talking about that. What are you going to do moving forward? Quit thinking about the past. Quit dwelling on the past. We want leaders who possess not just political skill, but moral courage. Leaders who will prioritize truth over popularity. Righteousness over what is politically expedient. We have this hunger for authentic leadership, and it's not new. It's been around for generations. It's a longing that's echoed through the corridors of history. That's why I love this story that we're going to be talking about today from the Old Testament. I love this story. Way back in ancient times, when the nation of Israel had been split between the northern and the southern kingdoms, and things were very messy, God raises up a king called Jehoshaphat. This guy was different. He was different than the other kings. He actually cared about doing what God wanted, not just what made him popular. At the time, the nation of Israel is split. We have the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes, and we have the southern kingdom of Judah, which included Judah, the tribe of Judah, and parts of Benjamin. Very much like our country is today, split. God raises up Jehoshaphat, who will reign over Judah, the southern kingdom. He reigns for 25 years. And we know the years it was from 873 to 848 BC. And he is remembered as one of the good kings. Most of the good kings are going to come from the southern kingdom, just so you'll figure that out. When we hit the northern kingdom, we'll probably do another northern kingdom king next week. It's not a good king. What Jehoshaphat does is right in the eyes of God. He was strong when he needed to be. He was a reformer. He changed things. But he sought God's direction. Now, in our political system, throughout the years, we've struggled with basic honesty and accountability. Jehoshaphat doesn't have that problem. Real leadership starts with surrendering to God. But more than that, Jehoshaphat's going to show us that even the best human leaders will let us down eventually. Even the best. And that is exactly why we need Jesus. So as we dive into this ancient story, we're going to see how it actually speaks to our current moment. We're going to discover some maybe amazing potential and the limits of man, of human leadership. But most important, we're going to see how this points us towards one leader who will never disappoint us. And that's Jesus the King, who will reign forever. So in a time in our country when so many of us are wondering if there's any hope for any real change in politics, let's look at an old story that shows us, yes, there is. That it is possible. But our hope is not in human leaders. Our hope should be placed elsewhere. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 22, starting with verse 41. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, began to reign over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. Remember, we gauge our time by who was king in the opposite kingdom. So Ahab is now king in the northern kingdom, and Jehoshaphat becomes king in the 4th year of his reign. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. He walked in all the way of Asa his father. He did not turn aside from it, doing what was right in the sight of the Lord. Remember, his father Asa had been a reformer also. And he did many reforms, but he also made many mistakes. Yet, the high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. What is it about Jehoshaphat that made him different? Why was he different than all the other kings that had come before him and all that were going to come after him? We're going to look at his character. We're going to see that there are 3 things that made him the kind of leader that, number one, Judah needs, and the kind of leader that most nations need today. One that people will respect and follow. Well, first of all, he followed godly examples. This is something that many times in our culture today is kind of different. Jehoshaphat actually looked up to his father. Sometimes that's a rarity in our world today, mostly because sometimes fathers aren't the best people to look up to. The Bible says he walked in all the ways of Asa, his father, and did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. This wasn't just so I'm going to follow in my dad's footsteps. Asa was a reformer, a king who took corrupt religious practices and basically just took them out of the kingdom. He cleaned house. And Jehoshaphat, when he saw what his father did, he says, you know what? That is the kind of leader I want to be. Think about it. In a time when most children were probably rebelling against their parents. All children rebel against their parents. But at that time, Jehoshaphat embraced the best of what his father encompassed, the best of what his father represented. He understood something we've kind of lost today. There's incredible value in generational faithfulness. Even within the church, we have pastors who, we're talking the pillars of the Christendom, whose children become pastors, and then those children actually turn away from God. We all know Charles Stanley. We always thought about him. I always thought he was a pretty good preacher, pretty solid. His son Andy started out that way, not so much anymore. It happens. Jehoshaphat didn't just copy his dad. He learned from him. He took what was good and he built upon it. He made it as his own. It's like what real mentorship should look like. Jehoshaphat shows us that it's not weak to follow someone else's example. Just because we're not doing it our own way doesn't mean that we're stronger than someone who follows the example of somebody who's done it right. That's actually smart leadership. Why in business? Why would I do something the wrong way just because just because I want to do it my own way? No, we need, as a business leader, you need to look at what's going on around you. You need to talk to the experts. You need to see what works and what is right, what's beneficial not only for you, but for your business, for your employees, for your community around you. And those are the things you need to do, even if it's difficult. Jehoshaphat was committed to reform, and I'm sure it wasn't easy. Look what it says in verse 44 through 46. It says, Jehoshaphat made peace with the king of Israel. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat and his might that he showed and how he warred, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And from the land he exterminated the remnant of the male cult prostitutes who remained in the days of his father Asa. See, his father had done some reform, but had not gone far enough. So along comes Jehoshaphat and says, nope, we're going to take it further. This is where it gets interesting. He rid the land of the rest of the male shrine prostitutes who remained there even after the reign of his father Asa. His dad had dealt with it, but not completely. So Jehoshaphat has to deal with it again. But see, that's the thing about corruption. Corruption has a way that when you think corruption is gone, corruption has a way of getting itself, of creeping back in. And that's exactly what's happening. That's what's going to happen to our current administration if they're not careful. We think the enemy is defeated. We've wounded him. No, we haven't. We've just made him more determined to get his way into our lives. That's why I always tell people when they first become believers in Christ or when they're first baptized, I'm like, be careful. You've now painted a target on your back. The evil one had you before, and he lost you. He's going to try his darndest to get you back. Corruption wheedles its way in. Asa, his father, started the cleanup, but Jehoshaphat, he finished the job. He didn't just sit and say, well, Dad took care of that. I'm not going to worry about it. No, he said, it's a problem. He rolled up his sleeves. He got to work. He's like a gardener. Now, those of us who are gardeners, we understand that we can sit and we can plan and we can pick the best flowers, the best seeds to plant. I mean, I've got a garden planner. I'm not doing a garden this year because I need to rebuild all my boxes, but I got a garden planner where I can plan, well, this goes with this over here, and I'm going to put this with here. I need to plant this here this time. And we could do all of that. We could have the best seeds possible that are going to germinate completely every single time. But if we ignore the weeds, what's going to happen? I should have brought a picture of my garden right now, because I've done nothing with it, and it's nothing but weeds. See, we can't ignore the weeds in our lives.